Hello everyone and welcome to today's T-Level Core Component webinar. Thank you all for joining us today. I am Naz Lewis-Humphrey, the Industry Manager for Construction, and I'm joined by my colleagues from City and Guilds, EAL, Education and Training Foundation and Hodder Education, and we will be introducing them to you all shortly. Next slide, please. We are presenting this webinar from home, so please excuse any unwanted background noise. The presentation is likely to take around 30 to 45 minutes, which will leave us time for questions, which we will answer at the end of the webinar. Some slides will be a light touch, but we are happy to take questions at the end of the session and provide clarity or more detailed information. To engage with the webinar, please use the question and chat tabs from the on-screen panel. All attendees will be on mute throughout the webinar. Following the webinar, we will follow up with a copy of the presentation slides, and you will also receive a certificate of attendance direct from GoToWebinar. Please check your junk mail if you do not receive this within the next 24 hours. Now let's have a look at the agenda for today. This is our agenda for today, and below the agenda are topics that will be covered during the webinar, but also topics that will not be covered. We are happy to take questions on the uncovered topics, which we will try and respond to following the webinar. We will now move swiftly on and introduce the T-Level team and our guest presenters. Here we have the City and Guilds team. And EAL staff. We have guest presentations from ETF and Hodder Education. Next slide, please.
Thanks for that, Naz. Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Jason. I'm a technical advisor for City and Guilds. What we just wanted to show you now was elements of the core component that sit within the qualification handbook, just to sort of make you familiar with it and point out a couple of key parts of them. This is just a quick snapshot of the construction one as it's laid out on the screen. Again, attached is 400 GLH. You will find the draft TQ spec on our website as well under the T-level section. Just to note on there that it says knowledge exam under the assessment method. That is actually there is actually two knowledge exams for this core component. So it's just to bear that in mind, and we will get this amended prior to this going out off draft. But just some key points to pick up on is areas where obviously you can do some reading later on. What is the component about, which picks out a few topics. Then you've got what type of questions learners can ask themselves in preparation for undergoing the core component. And then to the side, we've just got another part of the qualification handbook, which lays out all of the underpinning knowledge outcomes. So when we're looking at sort of, could be CPD for staff or areas where you may need to do extra research, could be digital technology or sustainability, etc. Those are all of the key underpinning knowledge outcomes that will be covered in the core component with regards to construction on site. Completion of the on-site construction core will also give learners the opportunity to develop their skills within maths, English and digital skills. And you'll see how those are referenced within the qualification handbook as we go through today. I am going to hand you over to my colleague Mike from EAL, who's going to go through the BSE elements.
Thanks, Jason. Appreciate that, thank you. So we're now looking at an extract from the qualification handbook and core component for building services engineering. As you can see there, the level remains the same at level 3, but the guided learning hours is now larger than on site at 520, which includes construction and building service engineering knowledge outcomes. So when you look at the right-hand column, the underpinning knowledge outcomes, you'll see outcome 12, for example, relates to BSE systems. This really gives a learner a broad overview of system types within BSE. So the number of assessments in the assessment methods section, there's 2 knowledge tests and 1 employer set project. And obviously this page also contains an overview of what the component is about and how learners may prepare by asking themselves the questions listed here. Next slide, please. So the handbook also breaks down further the learning outcomes into criteria. And where necessary, this is supported by range. So here, in this example here, we see that the learning outcome is health and safety. The criteria being 1.1, construction, legislation and regulations in bold type. And then a range added for legislation and regulations, which needs to be delivered as part of that outcome. There's also a section on what do learners need to learn, which really amplifies and supports the delivery of the content in the criteria. This really provides the context to the depth and breadth which needs to be delivered. So in the right-hand column, it provides skills abbreviations, which relate to the core skills and general competencies in English, mathematics, and digital skills. So the abbreviations are fully explained within the handbook. Next slide, please. So this slide provides an overview of the assessment components. The learners must complete all assessment components. And the top table covers construction on site. And as you can see there, exam paper 1, it's an externally set exam. You see its duration is 2 hours. It's got 90 marks awarded to it. Each assessment component has a weighting behind it. Exam paper 1 there has 35% weighting. It's externally marked. And altogether, exam paper 1, 2, and the employer set component will be awarded a grade scale of A star to E. BSE is very similar. Again, the learners must complete all the assessment components. The exam paper 1 and 2 is a little longer. The weighting remains the same. And the grading remains the same on scale A star to E. Next slide, please. So here we find the information about the availability of assessments. It says there on the left-hand side that learners can retake their exams and they can retake to improve their grades as well. But any retake must be completed within 2 years after completion of the learner's T-level program. So the table below really sets out the scheduled assessment windows annually for the T-levels in construction. However, the exact dates will be provided, will be communicated to all approved providers through the key date schedule. But you can see there an example of core exam 1. It's fair series, it's a written exam. It's going to be taken within the calendar months of May to June of 2022, and there will be a set date for the assessment window. Any retake series then, for instance, for core exam 1, again, another written exam, be taken in November 2022, and there will be a set assessment window date for that. Next slide, please. So this slide really gives an assessment overview of the employer set project assessment component. So the employer set project, or ESP, is made up of several tasks listed at the bottom of the slide. As you can see there, there's tasks 1.1 to 2.2. The ESP really assesses the knowledge and skills learned as part of the core element. and it must take place within a specified controlled conditions. The ESP has been developed with employers in order to accurately reflect the on-site and building services engineering sectors. It's linked to a number of core skills listed on the bottom right-hand side of the slide. And as stated previously, it only assesses the knowledge and skills learned as part of the core element. So the specific knowledge and skills relating to the occupational specialisms will be assessed within the practical assignments. Next slide, please. So here we see the scheduling of the ESP assessments. And you can see here that the window will occur from March to May annually. Again, specific dates will be released throughout in the following academic year. But we can see here, for instance, task 1.1, it's set within a window and it's going to be 3 hours long. And 2.2 there, again, it's set with an assessment window according to timetable, and it's an hour long. So here really just provides the overview of the task, the scheduling, and the duration of the task. Next slide, please. So let's look at the grading rules for the T-level. So for a learner to be awarded a T-level, they must complete all of the elements, which includes the technical qualification, English and Maths at level 2, the industry placement, and any other requirements set, such as a license to practice qualification. So once all the above requirements have been met, the learner will be eligible to be awarded an overall qualification grade for the T-level. So let's take a look at the lookup table below. As you can see there, let's say the learner achieves a B in the core component grade and a merit in the occupational specialism grade, then overall they will receive a merit for their TQ. Okay, so I'm going to hand over to Sam now from the ETF.
Great, thank you very much. Very helpful presentation. My name's Sam Dilloway-Davies, National Head of Performance Management at the Education and Training Foundation. And I'm just going to take us through about 10 minutes on what we're doing at the ETF to be able to support you to be able to provide the T-level. So for your workforce development for yourselves, your teams, and across your organisation. So on to the next slide, please. Thank you. So many of you may have already engaged with the T-level professional offer. It's a suite of high quality professional development to support the teachers, trainers, leaders and support staff who are delivering T-levels from 2020 and beyond. I say that many of you may have already done this because we've been offering the T-level professional development offer since May 2019. We have already had sorry, I've got a problem with my tech. It's not moving on. We have already had 6,000 individuals engage with the offer so far. From across all of those roles, we also have governors who are involved in this. So lots of people have already engaged with this, and we will continue to deliver this offer right up until 2024, which is the final rollout, the start of the final waves of T-levels. And on to the next slide. The gateway to the T-level professional development offer is through the new platform. And through this, you can have an opportunity to undertake a training needs analysis, which will help you to identify specific gaps and areas for development in your skills and knowledge around T-levels. And it generates a personalized package for you based around your role, or for those here who are middle leaders, managers, for those of your team, and also to be able to provide you based on the experience, the knowledge, what you need, with that action plan to be able to work out what you need to do. We also have teams who are doing an organisational training needs analysis, and many of you will have already had that from your organisations. We've met with all of the Wave 2, the 2021 providers, to provide this support. The next slide is going to go into a little bit more detail on other things included within our offer. So first of all, understanding T-levels. Obviously, to be able to deliver T-levels, you really need to understand everything about T-levels, all of the how this will impact your organisation and your role, and then really going into that detail of how you can go forward from there. It also helps you to be able to have that knowledge to help the learners that you're working with high quality advice and guidance. Second up then, what we call the role and the route specific training. This is where we have those personalised CPD journeys created from a range of courses. So we've got courses for new teachers. That might be technical people who are coming in and this is their first role teaching. We've then got a course called Teaching T-levels, which is for people to be able to have an upskill or update on some of their teaching methods and so on. And then we've got the route and T-level courses, and those ones will be particularly interesting for people on this call, because for each of the routes we have a route level course and then we have a T-level course. So in the construction area, we have got both online and face-to-face courses for the route and for the 3 T-levels that are within that route. Next up then, we've got professional development for leaders. Sorry, can we go back to the previous slide? I was just meaning on the next bullet point. Thank you. So on the third bullet point there down on the left, we've got professional development for leaders, and we split this into 3 types of roles. So we've got the operational middle leaders and managers, we've got strategic leaders, and then we've got governors and those involved in governance professionals and so on. We've got industry insights. So this is an opportunity for staff to be able to go back into their industry through either a workplace shadowing, which is about a day, or a work placement, which is up to 5 days, to be able to go back into that workplace. Obviously, the current situation means that we're having to do that virtually, and we're providing lots of other ways to be able to do that in this situation. And then we're also scheduling industry workshops to be able to give that up-to-date knowledge on what that industry is like. We know that there are a lot of people who are teaching who've not been able to have that industry updating for a number of years. Networks, we have scheduled networks all around the country, currently running online, with the opportunity to interact, collaborate and share effective practice with colleagues across the sector. So we've got different types of network. We've got curriculum design and development networks, and for those we do them within each of the routes. So we're already hosting ones for the construction sector. I think we've already run 2 of those, and we'll continue to run several of those each term. The dates for January will be coming out just before Christmas, so do keep an eye out for those ones. We've also got networks for industry placements. We've got networks for those who are delivering T-levels within schools. And then we've got one-off networks that we'll be scheduling based on demand. So we ran one last week for marketing leads. We've got another one planned for CPD leads. And then final element then is our T-level resource improvement projects, or TRIPs, which are action research projects for staff to get together across the country on areas that they feel that they need to work together on, areas related to T-levels that they think actually we can get together with people from other organisations, and when this can attract some funding for remission for the project, to enable us to be able to get time aside from our day jobs so that we can focus on something and learn together with other colleagues who might be facing a similar thing. All of those things are open and available, and you're very welcome to put in applications for TRIPs right now. TRIPs, again, I think to highlight for this group, there could be a trip and something to do with construction. It could be something to do with on-site, BSE, and so on. It could be specific things that you've realised as part of the TQ that you need to work on with some of your colleagues. So then on to the next slide now. Best way for you to be able to find out all of our updates around events that we're running, around trips, networks, and so on, is to sign up to our ETF email bulletin. This is the link here. I'm sure the slides will be sent around to you. So do sign up here and we'll make sure that you have access to the things that you need to know based on your role and the things that we have available specifically around construction. And on the final slide, just to also highlight that we have a regional team at the ETF. You'll be aware that lots of different organisations have got people in the regions who are there to be able to support you. Our team can support you specifically around TLPD and around the workforce development. So we've got regional facilitators in each of the different areas around the country. We've got 3 teams around the country. And they can help you with the things that we've got there in red. So they can help you understand T-levels, support you with your planning and delivery. And actually, you may already know this because even with COVID, we're finding that we're having a lot of demand for them to come in and to speak to teams, to be able to speak to curriculum teams, to speak with employer groups, and they're being used in all sorts of ways, so do get in contact with them. The map in the slides you'll see is actually a clickable map, and we've also got that on our website, so you can get in contact with your regional facilitator allocated for you and for your organisation if you're not already in contact with them. Thank you very much. That is all from me at this point. I know the organisers said that it would be questions at the end, so I will hand on to the next presenter. Thank you.
Thanks a lot, Sam. That's just a shout out, really. I think we can move on and we're going to hand over to Thomas from Hodder Education in a second. Before Thomas kicks off, just a shout out, really. There is the questions tab. So any questions, especially for our guests today, please start typing them in the questions tab and we'll pick everything up at the end. So now, as I said, handing over to Thomas Stotter from Hodder Education.
Great, thanks, and thank you for having me. So firstly, just to introduce myself very briefly, I'm Tom Stotter. I'm the Senior Commissioning Editor at Hodder Education, and I look after all of our construction and building services publishing. So hopefully you'll have come across Hodder Education in the context of our series of textbooks, which we publish with City and Guilds, so endorsed by City and Guilds, and lots of plans to do so in the future. So just to flag first, you'll get the slide with my email address. If you ever have any questions about what we're publishing, want to be involved in our publishing, just drop me an email, give me a shout. I'm always happy to talk, and your feedback informs everything that we do and everything that we publish. Next slide, please. So in this context, I'm pleased to say that we will be publishing to support the new T-levels, and we'll be doing this in stages, really. So in the first place, what we're going to be doing is we're going to be publishing. I've had lots of conversations with, I don't know if anyone on the call here, but lots of conversations with teachers preparing to deliver the T-levels, and it seems to be the core that you want the most support with. So we'll be publishing 2 textbooks to cover each of the cores. So it'll be 2 separate textbooks. So one for building services, one for on-site construction. And that textbook will include everything you expect from a Hodder Education City and Guilds textbook. So it will be all the content covered. There'll be features to improve your maths, improve your English. There'll be case studies. There'll be research suggestions. There'll be activities, activities that help students think about things in the way that they'll think about them when they come to exams. So you'll be really covered in both of those core elements, and that will be published in both print format and it will be available digitally. So in our ebooks, both the interactive ebook that you might have used, the student e-textbook, whiteboard e-textbook, and the available through other platforms as well. But that's just the first stage. So we have lots of other ideas about how to publish and support T-levels, which I'm not going to tell you about in detail at the moment because they are ideas. But if you would like to talk about them, and if you have ideas of your own, what you'd like to see, whether you think that idea of publishing for the core component in the first place is a bad one or a good one, then like I said, do let me know. We're building something called a teacher team, which is a team of teachers, as the name suggests, but is really what we would do with that team is we run ideas by them. When sample content is available, we run that by our teacher team, so you get early access to content. There'll be lots of things coming out in the context of T-levels. So if you'd like to join that or be involved in reviewing or even authoring for us, then give me a shout. Next slide, please. So down to the nitty-gritty, what's actually happening and when. So the publication dates for our 2 textbooks are at the bottom of this slide here, October and November respectively. So October will be for the building services and November for the on-site construction. Now I appreciate that's very slightly, well, it's later than you'll be publishing, than you'll be delivering that material. And that's simply because of the work that will need to go into those textbooks. We don't want to rush it. We want to get it right. We want it to be something that stands the test of time. But to mitigate against the fact that you won't have a textbook in your first month or so of teaching, we're going to be publishing sample chapters for both of those. And there'll be quite substantial sample chapters that will be available in print and digital. So we'll send them to free for any centre that wants them. And that will be to focus on content that you would likely be delivering in the first month or two. We haven't decided which one, so again, drop me a note if there's any particular unit you'd like me to start with those sample chapters, and I'll see if I can make it so, because I think that will be hopefully a way for you to get used to what our textbook will be like and how you might use it in your teaching. We're also going to be publishing some mapping grids, and what they'll do is they'll demonstrate how you can use our existing publishing, which many of you will have, to deliver the T-levels, I suppose in some context the core content, but really the occupational specialisms, because obviously there'll be lots of content covered in, say, the book 2 level 3 electrical book that will be in that occupational specialism. So we'll make it easy for you so you don't have to do this deciphering yourself, and that will be ready in July so you can factor it into your planning. Again, that will be free and that will be available digitally. But if you want early sight of any of these things, like I said, let me know and we can add you to our teacher team. Next slide, please. And this is just, well, this is just a little more detail on the books themselves. So I won't read it out, and you'll have it when you get the slides, but this is essentially a rundown of what those books will do. So they're going to focus on the things that we think students and teachers would like support with in the form of a textbook. So there'll be the content covered, application and real world case studies, health and safety, get ready for the workplace, functional skills, and of course assessment practice and employer set project practice in the early, obviously the planning stages. It would only be the planning element of it, but yeah, so assessment will be a feature that runs throughout it, and it will look and feel like the other textbooks of ours and of the City and Guilds that you might have used previously. So hopefully it'll be familiar to you and it will be easy to slot into your teaching. That's me. Thank you.
Thanks a lot, Tom. Some useful information there, and I'm sure centres will be really keen to look at some of that draft material to try and give them some of the context and scope for delivery. That'll be really useful. We've asked Tom to keep us posted on development, etc., and we're going to be asking Tom, as well as colleagues from various organisations, to keep joining these webinars to try and give us an update on where things are. So we'll keep you posted on that, and we'll ask Tom to come and join us again for a future webinar. We're going to start moving to questions now, and myself and Alison Whittle are going to start and answer questions. So start dropping any questions in the questions tab. I want to just raise a couple of things. What we are requesting centres to do, and I've put this in the chat, we've requested centres to fill in a centre update form, so the T-levels pre-approval form, which will basically help us get your details with regards to delivery, and will basically give you the information you need to be able to deliver. So we're going to be then inviting centres into some of the occupational specialisms and things like that. So I've dropped that in the chat. It's also there for on the slide there as well. We've also got T-level provider contact update form. So that's for anybody delivering T-levels or anybody involved in T-levels really. And that'll allow us to invite the particular people to then the niche occupational specialisms events. So I've just dropped that in the chat. And as well as that, the links you might have to just cut and paste the links from the chat into a browser if you wanted to do that while we're on the quick Q&A session. As well as that, I'm also going to just drop in there a link to a survey. Obviously, we're trying to facilitate these events and, you know, bring in guests and things like that and make these as beneficial as possible for you as centres. But we've got a link to the survey It might not hyperlink from the slide at the moment. Obviously, it will when you get a copy of the slide deck through. And that's why I've just dropped the little tiny URL link into the chat function. So, you know, if you don't tell us what you need support with, we can't facilitate that. So please, it's a couple of minutes. Would you please complete the survey either during the Q&A session or after the event when you get the slides through? Click on the link there and please complete the survey and what sort of thing you'd want for future events. So we're going to start and look at questions. Alison, I'm not sure, do you want to start and pick up on any questions, and then I'll just drop back into the questions tab and have a look what's coming in. So please keep firing your questions in and we'll try and address them as we possibly can.
Okay, so thanks. Callum seems to have answered quite a lot online, so thank you very much, Callum. I think it's sort of the questions have been answered as we've gone along. Just going to pick up on one about the funding for technicals. We can't really make any assumptions about what funding will be removed or will continue, because although we've had the consultation for the white paper for the post-16, we don't have that publication is not available yet. So we won't have any information about what funding, if any or all, will be removed. So and that's where we're up to really with that. We can't, as soon as we have that information, obviously it'll be straight on our website and be available to everybody. Looking at one of the questions, I think has already been answered, I think by Callum again, the employer set project. Yeah, I think you've answered that really. I think, is that enough? If the person who's asked the question could just let us know if they've answered, that's been answered fully for them. Yeah, I think we've also had, when will the textbook be available? I think we've answered that online and also in there. And I think there's one last question that I can see here, a question for Jason, actually. Jason, I don't know whether you can access the question panel there.
Yeah, what is the rationale behind the area of the specialism 1.6? There is a large crossover to bench a machine, and which seems relevant to sites such as wall, resource. So yeah, again, I mean, going back to carpentry and joinery, we shared in previous webinars that when we received the outline content from iFit, that carpentry and joinery were linked together for the purpose of the T-level. So unfortunately, there is going to be crossover in there. You know, we may feel that it is irrelevant, but at the minute, you know, they are currently seen as one occupational specialism. Back in June, July, August, even September again, before we even submitted our third milestone submission, you know, we were asking centres, attendees to webinars to complete a survey on carpentry and joinery. I'm happy to share that again, and I know we've got more attendees on today, and happy to take more of a response on that with regards to carpentry and joinery, because, you know, ultimately in industry, in every other sector, whether it's apprenticeships, technicals, qualifications, whatever that may be, carpentry and joinery are seen as two separate disciplines. We do need that feedback to then take back to iFit in order to implement any change that could come about. But without the sort of feedback, you know, we could be struggling with that. So what I can do, Gary, is I can share the carpentry and joinery survey with everyone after this, and maybe pick that up with you after today's webinar. Would that be okay?
Thanks, Jason. I'm just going to pick one up there. And when will the qualification handbooks be released? Callum has answered that. We'll just, obviously it's good information for everybody. So we're at the final stages really of development. A number of weeks we're hoping now we should have a qualification handbook and then a qualification web page going live. I've been in contact with the person who's leading on the development before the webinar, who can't attend today, but that is imminent. The qualification going live is imminent. We're in the final stages of development. When we make that qualification web page live, it will then be searched as a qualification number like all our quals are. So it'll move from the T levels page, just to give you the heads up. It'll go into its own qualification web page with the qualification number. We'll also be then uploading sample assessment material, I've been told, as well. So that's just something in addition to what Callum dropped in there on the text response.
Can I just come in on one more thing, Rob? Just going back to the joinery point, the links that Rob shared with you in the chat and on the slide previously about getting your information and understanding what occupational specialisms you guys are going to be running, that will also help us to target our comms. So, you know, for example, the carpentry and joinery that Gary's raised, by filling in those documents, that will help us target basically you guys to try and get that feedback from you. So if you know, we do put these documents out there, we know that it is another survey or another link to go through and another document to complete, but you know, they do have so much importance, and completing them really help us to help you ultimately. So if you could take time to complete them, that would be fantastic. And then, like we've said, you know, we can then target our support and our comms to you guys accordingly.
Thanks, Jason. We've had a comment on looking at the core as a concern, really, that it's quite large and it could take quite a significant amount of time and more than their occupational specialism in the first year to deliver. And it's an issue because obviously people might be signing up wanting to maybe electricians or plumbers. Yeah, the core is quite significant, and there's, you know, there is material in there which is very different to what we know and love in the trade areas we're delivering at the moment. There's a lot of content which we would generally align with level 3 construction qualifications or ONC and even HNC type topics. So it is very different. I think that's crucial though from a city and guilds point of view, and as well we've got colleagues on from ETF and things like that. That's where we need to be discussing with you things like curriculum plans, how we can support with that, how we can look to maybe look at the crossover between core and BSE to make sure if there is overlap in delivery, we're not going to be sort of covering things twice. So that sort of thing is what we can maybe look at some of these future occupational specialism sessions or curriculum planning events. That's the sort of thing we can hopefully try and support with you, you know, in the countdown to delivery almost.
There's another couple of questions just come in there. I think one is around the employer set project, just to try and avoid any confusion. With regard to the employer set project, that is a scenario based sort of assessment, if you like. They don't actually do that out in the work placement. It's just been designed by the employers and based on real scenarios from the workplace. So yes, as mentioned as well, it can be complete prior to the work placement, so it's not reliant on the work placement. I hope that makes sense on that. Couple there, Rob, for you as well.
Just to add to that, Jason, the employer set project only covers the core and not the occupational specialism.
Yeah. We have one as well about
also
the electrician. So because this is what they've been sold to, is become an electrician. I think it's worth pointing out this is no substitute for an apprenticeship. So yeah, I don't know if you want to add to that, Rob.
I can pick that up, Jason.
Yeah, please, Salim. Yeah.
Yes. So basically, I know obviously we've had some of these questions, and I think these questions might be leading on to some questions around progression. But I think ultimately the vision around T levels, certainly for post-16 learners, is that there are 3 options: the academic option, the apprenticeship option, and obviously the T level option. Now, if learners are going to be choosing the T level option and they decide that the electrotechnical occupational specialism is their preferred choice, the plan is, and we're in discussions with the Institute as well as the Department for Education, is to ensure that there is a seamless progression to the respective apprenticeship standard, whether it's plumbing and heating, or if it's electrotechnical, or some of the other occupational specialisms. So obviously we wouldn't want to be encouraging learners to take a T level if there is no end goal for them to become competent, because we understand that at the end of your 2-year T level, you're not occupationally competent. Learners will obviously still need to go and complete the remainder of an apprenticeship standard that they've been doing their occupational specialism in. There is also the option of learners wishing, if they choose to use their successful T-level onto higher education. But I guess we know within this sector and within this industries, most learners will then want to go and complete their apprenticeship standard to become occupationally competent. And that's something, like I said, we're working with the Department for Education as well as the Institute, and we should have some more details around this over the coming months. And obviously those details will then be sent out, and we'll have webinars to discuss exactly what that looks like, as well as any funding implications that may also have as well.
Thanks, Liam. Yeah, and there's a couple of points in the chat around, you know, the content of the core, etc. And why would some of this be relevant maybe to electricians? You know, this has been developed by the IFATE route panel and handed down to us as the core content for the technical qualification. It is slightly different, you know, but, you know, I would also argue some of this is relevant. It does prepare them for the wider industry, you know, and maybe progressing into a role which might see some supervisory experience required and things like that. So, you know, yes, some of it is significantly different. It's new to us. This is where we've got to look at the resources we've got, support you with the delivery, support you with the actual curriculum planning, so we can implement this core and make the change. And personally, yes, I think, you know, if it's nailed on, you just want to be focused and you want to be an electrician, some of that knowledge might sort of leave you in time and you go along your electrical career. But maybe, you know, maybe further down the line, if you want to drop back into education, which is something, you know, which some of us do, I did actually, you know, came back into a college, did an HNC, HND, whatever it may be, that will be very beneficial knowledge, because it's preparing learners for that more academic route as well as the trade area as well. So it is very different, but, you know, I think if we can support that area very well, and some of the HODA material, you know, just a shout out for that, some of that in the trade area, if that matches the quality we've seen in the trade area, I don't think we'll be short of resources to deliver that, and it can be very beneficial delivery, and, you know, prepare that learner for a lot more job roles than just maybe the trade area they're looking at as well.
Just picking up on another question there, Rob, as well. It's about if centres are running this. The centre said they'll be teaching the core over 3 days and then do the occupational specialism for 1 day in relating to that specialism choice. And I think it goes back to the original, you know, an apprenticeship is 80% on the job and 20% college based, whereas the reversal of that is a T-level is 20% on the job and 80% class-based learning.
Yeah, and I think curriculum planning is key in that, Ali. You know, I think there's a couple of things in the questions there which I'll pick out, and it is important to keep these people interested, on track, engaged with the program they have signed up for. And let's say they are dedicated to become you know, working within that trade area, plumbing, electrical, brick, carpentry, whatever it may be, then we have got to maybe involve some of that delivery from day one. And that's where curriculum planning will be key, to make sure we're still engaging those learners in those curriculum areas and doing the practical elements they'll be interested in as well. So that's the sort of thing we've got to look at when we come to those curriculum planning sessions, to hopefully bring centres together to discuss how that can happen. You know, what's the best way of doing that? You know your learners better than we could. We can help facilitate those sessions, etc. But I think bringing centres together for sessions like that will be really key.
Yeah.
One thing I will say is, you know, if you're completing the survey, which I've dropped the link in the chat, tell us when you want that type of thing to happen. You tell us when you're planning your curriculum. We've said January we're going to run it. You know, is that, obviously that's probably the soonest we can do it now, but is that when you want that? Do you want that now? Do you want it January, or are you happy to have it, you know, February? What are you wanting after February? Tell us in that survey and we can facilitate that support for centres. So just adding to that on support, colleagues today from it's Neil McManus from Leicester College. We don't usually mention the name, but Neil's been very supportive and dropped a link in the chat to some of the T-level industry placement material and guidance. So if anybody's not seen that already, I've just dropped that in the chat as well. Got a quick question saying again whether we, whether T levels will be run beside our 8202. There's a current consultation going out around all level 3 programs with regards to delivery. So we are unsure of the outcome of that. It's the unknown at the moment. We can only say what's funded at the moment. Obviously 8202 is the funded level 3 program we've got in place at the moment. Will this consultation at level 3 and will the funding organisations decide not to fund these programs in future, then this is something we can't answer at this present time. We've just got to work with the cards we've got at the moment, I'm afraid. So it's the unknown is the answer, really. What will be provided if instead of 8202? So if it would be T-level, they could run it alongside each other, but the vision we've been given at the moment, and it's the vision we've been given, and not necessarily these things always fall into place, but T-level is going to be predicted the only funded level 3 program. Now I'm cautious how I say that because we've seen this in the past. We was told technicals could be the only funded program, and diplomas all of a sudden remain funded, and things change in government and direction changes in education. So we can only say what we know at the time, and the focus we've been given is eventually T levels will be the funded level 3 program. Will that happen? Your guess is as good as mine. Government could change, direction could change in education, and things could change dramatically. But at the moment, that's the focus, what we've been told, and that's the direction things seem to be going in. So T-level would be the replacement for 8202 eventually.
Just picking up on one last question, Rob. It's about the content, obviously, is a very high learning standard because it is level 3. And how is this allowing students to reach these standards? So T levels are for students who are able to access a level 3 levels of standard. For those students that aren't quite ready to access a level 3, there will be something called a transition year that is run by the AOC, and that is for students who need that extra year, and the funding is extended for that extra year to allow students to access their T level after a year. And there are obviously some considerations that have been made for SEND learners, and the AOC have all of the details for that, as they're going to be running that program before T levels.
Thanks, Alison. Keep any more questions coming in. We are trying to get through as many as possible, either typed from colleagues in the background, or if we think it's relevant, we'll try and shout it out. It can be a criticism, it can be a concern. We try and share what people are thinking in these webinars, so we don't try and hide away from relevant comments and questions, as the people can probably see today. So keep them coming. We have got about 10 minutes left, so we'll keep monitoring things for a few minutes. Just to shout out again, if you have got a few minutes, please complete the survey so we can get a little bit of feedback and what you require for the future as well, while you're listening to the Q&A coming in, if you haven't got any burning questions you want to type in.
Just one more to come through, Rob, there. It's how are T levels being marketed to employers as they won't understand it? I think all of us could probably add a little bit to the answer to this, but just to start off this this sort of answer, T levels have been designed with employers, and it's critical that employers have had feedback into the T levels. I know that the DFE have done a huge amount of work engaging employers contacted some major employers across all of the 11 T-level routes. There's ongoing promotions, presentations and raising awareness for employers. There are also financial incentives for employers to provide some industry placements. So that is part of the DFE remit in order to engage and make sure employers and schools and HE is another HEIs are all aware of how T-levels will be presented, addressed and delivered as well. So that's part of their remit, but I know other people might want to come in on that one.
Yeah,
Thanks, Sally. I'm going to give sorry, I was just going to give you a shout, Celine, to see if you could just give people an insight into what we're doing with the industry boards and yourself and Naz are working on.
Yes, thanks, Rob. So just on that question, and I spoke to the individual this morning actually at their employer board, but just to add, the question around how T-levels are being marketed to employers, and just to add on what Ali's basically said, at each milestone that we have been asked to develop our technical qualification, employers have been involved from the outset at each milestone. So they've been validating the content. They've also been looking at the content that we've been producing and then feeding that content back into ourselves as well as the institute. So they've been on this journey, as we said from the outset. I think the idea and the ideal scenario is to market this product with the employers, and we've created an employer and industry board both within on-site construction as well as building services engineering. And the idea of that employer and industry board is to literally do that. You know, we're in this delivery phase at the moment, and the plan is to host a number of events leading up to September to market this product to the delivery network, but to the wider industry, to get more employees involved, to help with the employer engagement, to help with the employer and the stakeholder engagement as well. So there are a number of activities, and we will work alongside ETF and HODA to almost showcase the support resources that we've got to dovetail with the actual qualification as well. So there are a number of activities planned for next year, and they will involve a much wider scope of employers to help facilitate all the activities that we've actually got.
Just to add to that as well,
Thanks
you've
a lot,
got,
Celine.
sorry Rob, just you've got the government's own marketing initiatives as well, which is being targeted through social media platforms to employers to inform them of T-levels and work placement opportunities and stuff for learners. So that was just one little thing to add. There's a question coming on carpentry and joinery regarding the GLH. Through validation, of which employees were a key part of that, we actually did increase the GLH on carpentry and joinery on all of the occupational specialisms actually for construction on site. And the GLH was agreed with employers, was agreed through validation, and then obviously through IFIT and their employer channel. But one thing, you know, to be clear on is the T-level and ESFE and DFE and IFIT and everybody in between want learners to be progressing from this T-level onto apprenticeships. So, you know, we know that it's no substitute. This is an 80-20 split the other way around with regards to college learning versus work-based. So there is still, regardless of what level we call it, level 3 in apprenticeships or at level 2 or level 3, regardless of that, there is still a significant gap in vocational learning for learners to get on site or get into the industry and complete the vocational competency elements in order to allow them to become fully qualified tradespeople. The GLH on carpentry and joinery at the minute is unlikely to be increased, I will be honest. But we're not catering more to the academic side. I think it's about raising every side, really, raising the practical aspirations of the learners and the skills, raising the knowledge elements and the academic skills of the learners as well, which will ultimately help raise the profile of the industry, which, you know, I think we all would agree would certainly benefit from, you know. So for me, it is a good thing that we are sort of challenging learners more around their academical aspects, but also around the practicals. But just to be clear as well, I don't think that we are limiting learners' opportunities to get into industry by introducing a T-level, because ESFA are currently looking at what progression looks like with regards to funding, and ultimately funding on apprenticeships hasn't changed. So if there's still a year and a day left of learning, that apprenticeship will be funded, and we are in constant dialogue and liaison with DFE, ESFA and IFA to feed back your comments as well with regards to progression into apprenticeships. But I don't think with the removal of certain qualifications that we're restricting learners' entry into the industry, because ultimately there will be a T-level which learners can progress to, or ultimately they can go in via a normal apprenticeship as well. So I just wanted to sort of give you some reassurance as well that, sorry Rob, just because T-levels have been introduced, T-levels haven't changed the industry. Carpentry and joinery is still carpentry and joinery, electrical is still electrical, and plumbing, etc. So just to give you guys the reassurance, it's not been changed overnight. Yes, the core has increased. Yes, carpentry and joinery is now together. And we all have our views on that, and hopefully when I share this, we can get that feedback from you. But again, the T-level is about raising the aspirations, raising the standards of what the learners going into our industry should be going into with. So hopefully that sort of gives you a bit of reassurance and answers a couple of questions as well. CSCS. Can we come back to you on CSCS? Yes.
Yeah, we're just going on to the employer point. I think Sam, colleague attending today, got a couple of points you wanted to raise. Do you want to come in on that one, Sam, before we move on to the CSCS question?
Yeah, absolutely fine. Yeah, thank you. Yes, I thought I'd just add to that question because we heard an update from DFE just yesterday, and they actually wanted that to be shared within our network. So this is a good opportunity. So DFE, through their strategic comms team and networks and their spend, have been more focused on learners and parents and that sort of thing until now. So they shared with us the news that the first ever T-levels media campaign targeting employers launched on the 1st of December, and that is running until the end of February with a short break over the Christmas period. So they said that it's going to showcase what the T-levels are, how they apply to employers, looking to build desire and excitement for T-levels, demonstrating the benefits that they offer for employers and workplaces, and so on. It's going to have display advertising. It sounds like it will be on lots of social media, LinkedIn, Twitter, Instagram, Facebook, focusing on what T-level students can bring to those businesses. And I put a link in the chat. I don't know if the organisers have launched that now, but that's a new page. So hopefully that's helpful as well.
Real, Sam, thanks a lot. Jason, do you want to pick up on CSCS, or do you want me to come in on that?
Yeah, just a quick one. I think Callum's picked up on it as well. There's no actual health and safety or standalone health and safety assessment in the T-level. So if you want to run one of the other health and safety qualifications alongside it, as much as the assessments can't be APL'd, the learning can be APL'd. But again, with regards to CSCS cards, we are in dialogue with CSCS and the regulatory bodies to come up with a solution with regards to learners being on site. And initially CSCS wanted to issue labourers cards. We weren't in favour of that because we just wanted learners to be branded differently when they arrive on site rather than being branded as a labourer as such, because that 20% of learning that they're going to get on site is got to be so valuable to them. So we are working with them in order to create whether it's a T-level trainee card or the Undertaker trainee card, which lasts for a couple of years, which will obviously cover their access to a site. And who knows, maybe if it's more than 2 years, maybe it's 3 years. Again, it might support that progression into apprenticeship and give that learner a good opportunity to get access to an apprenticeship or access to site to further enhance their learning on site. That's CSCS, Rob. I don't know if there's anything from ECS.
Thanks, Jason. I'll pick a question up now on guided learning hours. Will there be enforcement on colleges to keep close to the GLH? delegate there just saying, in their experience, you know, they might only get 65% of GLH for delivery. That'll now be audited, basically, as part of the funding process. So I've not got figures in front of me at the moment, but let's say if the GLH is a round figure, 1,500 hours. As part of the funding agreement, the centre will have to deliver a minimum amount of hours. So it's, let's say if the GLH is 1,500, you will have to deliver a minimum of 1,200 to get that funding band, to be in that funding band. So what I would suggest is going back maybe into your centres and talking to people with regards to the funding, because that is important just to raise there. You know, you cannot just chop maybe guided learning hours like you did in the past. You've got to justify delivery with regards to the technical qualification, and there's a minimum amount of hours actually you've got to deliver on programme. So that encompasses everything with regards to your industry placement and everything else, which is regards to the T-level package. But there is a minimum funding requirement with regards to hours. So that's that question there. Just picking up on the CSCS, one of the delegates was saying they can actually sit a level 1 award to obtain a CSCS card, and I think that's something that they was trying to avoid with regards to the discussions. The discussions just seem to be out of our control slightly. It's bringing in other organisations who are having a wider discussion around T-levels and site cards, etc. And those discussions have not come to a head as yet. It's not something we can really enforce. The CSCS card is, you know, is aligned to the T-level itself, not the technical qualification. You know, it's regards the ownership of that is with IFATE, etc. So it's slightly out of our control. As you're well aware, for our qualifications, we'll have a discussion with maybe GIB Mechanical or whoever it may be. We'll map the criteria to their skills card criteria from our safety tests, and they'll issue a card on completion of our safety units or our safety delivery. So in the past, this hasn't been an issue. Now we've got a wider issue that other organisations need to facilitate this and need to basically put this into place across the board for T-level. So that's where we are at the moment. Any last questions? I'm mindful we're just slightly over time, so any last questions? It's last orders for questions. Feel free to type them in the questions tab there, and we'll try and pick them up. Well, just a last shout as well, if you don't mind completing the survey either in these last few minutes or when we send out the follow-up email, etc. We'd appreciate that so we can try and see what support would be beneficial in the future. So any last questions, comments, etc.?
I think that's it, Rob. I've had no more coming in at the moment.
Okay. Okay, sorry, I just got a load of sirens going past there. I just had to mute a minute. So if there isn't anything else coming in, I think we can close for today. We don't want to take up any unnecessary time for people. Just to say thank you. Thank you to all our guests today. Thank you to support we've had from colleagues from City and Guilds. Hope you all enjoy the rest of the day and keep in touch. Any queries, just respond to the follow-up email and we'll get back to you with any other correspondence. Thanks, everyone. Enjoy the rest of your day.
Thank you. Bye-bye.